What's up? Ghost Fictions is here, and we're back again. This is the third part of a story where Issei was the reincarnation of Black Goku. But before we start, please consider subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Don't forget to check the description for more informations. Now let's get into part 3. Several weeks later. Issei's house, Australia, Sydney, 4:30 p.m. Issei, Hel and Ophis were in the room planning their next attack. They knew that as time passed by, the sadness and despair in the place would have reduced and this would be the perfect chance to have an attack. From what this intel tells us, they are literally having their second engagement right as we know of it. Issei explained as he continued to look at the news that was spread online. Ophis and Hel knew that this could be a trap to lure them in. Even Issei had an idea on why they are making this engagement. Earlier, Issei had changed his credit card name from Issei Hyoudou to Issei Black to prevent himself from being identified. He also did the same to his SIM card to prevent himself from being associated with the Hyoudous and the factions annoying him in Australia. He hated doing this given the fact that his parents really cared for him even in their final moments before they were killed by Trahexa, but had no choice to do so since the factions would pester him a lot. True to his fears, they did show up mere moments with several devils entering the room. How Issei found out. He sensed their key and found out that they are devils. Their life force showed who they really were. The devils used memory magic to forcefully find out intel about his location, which they started by heading to the bank to do this. He killed the devils and found out their plans after torturing one for information while preventing the humans from finding out about it. Them entering Australia, which was a private territory, showed that they were sneaking in the location. Issei knew that they would go after the SIM card companies next and eliminated any supernatural beings that came to the location. Even angels were slain without any mercy or care if they ever entered into Australia. To prevent the factions from getting to him, Issei intentionally dumped their bodies into different islands so that they lose track of him. He had to do something to make them truly lose hope against him. But he knew that it would take several works to get the job done. He also destroyed their brains so that the devils and other factions can't use memory magic to extract memories from the deceased devils and angels. Back to the present, Issei found out about the wedding between Akeno Himejima and Kenji Hyoudou. He had an idea on why Kenji and by extension the factions did this, because it was a trap against him and his allies. With the added twist of it being a celebration for Kenji and Akeno, to keep themselves happy after such a huge tragedy happening several weeks ago. Issei, this is a trap. Hel mused with a tone full of warning, knowing that this can get them killed or worse, captured. Issei responded with a serious tone. I know, Hel, this is a trap. They are going to improve their security even further to try and stop me. But if we want to get what we want, this is the best opportunity. It a risk but well rewarded if the time is right. So what should we do? You got a plan? Issei only gave a smile. He then continued. While they were fortifying the households that I'd most likely target, I was able to ambush and eliminate Rival Phoenix, and with that I was able to gain this. Issei revealed a magic circle on a slip which he was able to gain from slaying Rival. Hel then continued with slight annoyance. So you killed him without informing us, huh? I would love to kill these bats when I get the opportunity. I thought you only wanted to get back at Odin. So I decided not to. Issei spoke with a smirk, which caused Hel to huff in annoyance, as Ophis responded emotionlessly. So with this, we can enter. Bingo, Rival's overconfidence became his downfall. He was so arrogant that he believed that his regeneration made him invincible. But he forgot the fact that with regeneration comes free extra pain. While I prefer improving myself with pain, which makes me stronger. Even I am not stupid enough to take a huge ki blast which can vaporize even a Satan class being in an instant. Having confidence in just regeneration, he didn't even teleport when he could due to this very overconfidence. He was alive, but barely, and I took this slip from him before vaporizing him completely. Issei responded with a cold tone, believing Rival to be a fool for believing that regeneration would be enough to survive. He may not be arrogant, and Issei knew he was better than his younger siblings Riser and Revel. Not a high bar to set but still appreciable. And do the Phoenix know about this? Hel asked with an intrigued tone, as Issei shrugged and spoke with a confident tone. Even if those filthy birds did, it wouldn't hamper our plans. The invitation never specifically wrote Rival's name due to these bats being arrogant about these invitations only reaching specific individuals. I still remember me getting an unnamed invitation when I was asked by Serkant's queen to help that red-haired whore to get there. Even this one didn't have one. Issei pointed to the slip he was holding which didn't have Rival's name. Office then spoke with an emotionless yet serious tone. In that case, you will be going in a disguise, correct? Yes, I will. Issei spoke with a smile, as he decided to get a mask for this wedding. He looked at Office, and spoke. Although I may need a partner, and Office will come with me. Office nodded. She didn't mind coming to this wedding. Plus, she is not a criminal in the eyes of the factions yet. Hell wanted to retort, but Issei spoke up. I understand that you also want to join, and you have your part. When I do show that I was able to infiltrate their security, I will bring you in using the golden tiger claws. Sounds cool. Hell looked at him, and responded while sighing with a tone of slight disappointment. That is fine. Good, then let's get ready to enter another wedding and get the maid for myself. Issei spoke with a dark and evil grin, knowing that he is going to ruin Akeno's most happiest day. He vowed to make this wedding memorable for all the wrong reasons. Wedding hallway, Kyoto, 3:30 p.m. Sirs X and Michael were monitoring the security of the wedding with sharp eyes, their expressions reflecting the gravity of the situation. This event, as auspicious as it was also a calculated trap to hopefully catch Issei. The seals created were powerful enough to subdue even a heavenly dragon, painstakingly designed with potent dragon-based magic and reinforced by the strongest magic users. Reports from their soldiers painted a grim picture. Every attempt to locate Issei had ended in massacre. Those sent to scout or engage him were slaughtered in brutal ways, brains and limbs missing, the corpses left as grotesque warnings. The sight of these atrocities had caused many to retch, their morale shaken. There was no doubt that this was Issei's work. Somehow, he had discovered their plans and struck preemptively. Do you think this will be enough? Michael's voice carried a mix of hope and tension as he watched the tightening of the security measures. He knew this was their best chance to eliminate Issei before he became completely unstoppable. It should be. Sirs X replied, anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. I've ensured the guards are equipped with weapons imbued with dragon-slaying magic. If this doesn't work, then we may not get another chance. Michael nodded hesitantly, his unease growing. And if it isn't enough? Sirs X's eyes hardened as he turned to face Michael. Then we face the reality that we're fighting a losing battle. But we will not falter, Michael. We can't afford to. Leaving Michael to his thoughts, Sirs X moved towards the guest seating area, where Gabriel sat gracefully on one of the chairs. Dressed in a pristine white cassock adorned with gold trimmings and crowned with delicate flowers, she radiated serenity, though her smile barely masked her concerns. She looked up at her brother as he approached. Brother, are you excited for the wedding? Michael nodded curtly. I am. But I'll be even more relieved once we deal with Issei. He's killed so many, Gabriel. He's committed genocide against the fallen angels. We can't let this continue. Gabriel's smile faded, replaced by a frown that deepened as she absorbed his words. I don't understand. Gabriel murmured. Why did he turn to this? What did Azazel, or any of them, do to deserve such a fate? Her naivety and lack of knowledge about the betrayal Issei had endured set her apart from others like Amaterasu and Yasaka, who sought to uncover the truth before taking action. Gabriel, however, was focused on stopping Issei as swiftly as possible, unaware of the depth and complexity of the situation. It was because of his failure to defeat Trihixa, Michael said bluntly, his tone devoid of empathy. Gabriel's eyes widened, a mix of shock and anger flashing across her face. Is that why you? Her words were cut off as Michael interrupted her, his attention shifting. Oh, the bride is here. His dismissive tone left Gabriel fuming as she rose and walked away, her cold gaze lingering on her brother before she disappeared into the crowd. The reason he didn't do so was because before dying Azazel managed to work through with the angelic system alongside Ajuka and many other smart members of the factions. The initial idea was to allow angels to pursue relationships, but it soon evolved into other things like performing other sins without the problem of falling. Akeno entered the venue, dressed elegantly in a traditional kimono. She wore a soft smile as she approached the altar, her demeanor carrying a sense of hope for a better future despite her turbulent past. Kenji waited for her at the altar, dressed in a sharp tuxedo, his eyes steady as she joined him. The wedding itself had been orchestrated by WHIS and Asya, who believed the union would bring some semblance of happiness after all the pain and loss they had endured. As the vows began, the crowd's attention turned to the couple. In the meantime, at a corner of the room, Issei in office, with Issei wearing a different clothing. He wears a black vest with longer flaps in the front and back secured by a black belt over a dark gray long-sleeved shirt and dark gray baggy pants, along with a black glove on his right hand. He has magenta bracers with white edges on his wrists and shins and magenta armbands with black edges, along with black boots with a dull yellow toe cap and heel that have thin lines going across them. His face is adorned with mask that has a bold black and white tribal-like marking, which was a time-breaker mask with red cracks and has a single visible eye that glows pink. Many in attendance were caught off guard by the presence of the new guest, a figure cloaked in an aura of quiet menace. His enigmatic demeanor set him apart, yet his proximity to Ophis, the infinite dragon god herself, offered an air of legitimacy. The fact that he carried an invitation, one that only a select few could issue, silenced any murmur of suspicion. To the untrained eye, he was an ally, but to those who truly looked, there was something unsettling about him. Issei Hyoudou stood among the crowd, his gaze fixed on the altar. Behind the mask that concealed his identity, his expression was a tempest of contempt and cold calculation. The joyous occasion unfolding before him only served to intensify his disdain. Of all those who had tormented him in the past, Akeno and RageRevan were at the apex of his hatred. Their betrayals and cruelty were etched into his psyche, and no amount of time or distance could dull the sharp edges of those memories. Azazel and the leaders were a little lower, and with Azazel dead, Issei has been eyeing his next victim relatively soon. Akeno's words were venomous and cutting, they echoed in his mind like a haunting refrain. It wasn't just the words themselves that angered him, it was the condescension, the malice behind them. Her laughter, her disdainful gaze, and her callous treatment of him had carved deep scars into his soul. The words, he was not going to forget. He was going to make her remember her consequences of the actions. I am glad I had met Kenji a few months before he had shown to defeat Trihixa. Not only was he a competent lover, but he is also not perverted. He has some moral restraint and kindness as opposed to you. You are nothing but a weak perverted fool who believed that I was here to save you. I am here to show you how happy I am with Kenji. Not only is he a better lover, but he is not dense unlike you, who couldn't even understand how women's emotion works. Yes, I have not forgotten your time when you failed to realize Ryas-sama's emotions, and I always secretly harbored my anger towards you for that. Our relationship was never there to begin with, and will never be there. Drill that into your head. And if you can't, this will change your thought process completely. She thinks she can move on so easily, Issei thought, his single visible eye glowing faintly behind the mask. She'll learn soon enough that the past doesn't forget. The vows continued, the couple exchanging words of love and commitment. The crowd was enraptured, their attention wholly focused on the ceremony. Issei, however, was unmoved. To him, the wedding was a farce, a hollow celebration built on a foundation of lies and betrayal. Ophis, standing beside him, observed quietly. Her expression was inscrutable, but the faint tension in her posture suggested she was attuned to Issei's inner turmoil. She glanced at him momentarily, as if to gauge his restraint. For now, he remained still, his simmering rage held in check by the thin veneer of civility. Informing Ophis, via telepathy, he told. We strike, now. Ophis nodded in understanding. He soon got up and headed to a nearby restroom. She waited for him, with some wondering where the new guest was heading. However, their attention was turned to the wedding ceremony, as Kenji made an announcement full of joy and happiness. Everyone, I am glad for your arrival to this auspicious wedding. Despite what happened, it is a good thing that we are having this wedding with my beloved. One of my beloved, and I am glad that all of you are able to make time for this. The woman beside me, Akeno Himejima, is one of the most beautiful and kind-hearted women I have ever encountered in my life. I am glad to have you in my life. The audience, excluding Ophis, erupted into enthusiastic applause and cheers following Kenji's heartfelt speech. Akeno blushed deeply, her eyes glistening with emotion as she looked toward her groom. The warmth in the room was palpable, a shared sense of joy and celebration uniting everyone present. For a moment, it seemed as if nothing could shatter the happiness they had built. But that moment was fleeting. The jubilant atmosphere was torn asunder by a voice that echoed through the hall, cold and laced with venom. Heh. Kind-hearted. This has to be the biggest joke I've ever heard in my life. The laughter that followed was sharp, mocking, and dripping with disdain. It reverberated off the grand walls of the venue, freezing the celebration in its tracks. Heads turned toward the source of the voice, and a suffocating silence descended upon the hall. The voice was unmistakable. Ophis, seated calmly among the crowd, rose to her feet. Without a word, she began to make her way toward the exit. Those closest to her gave questioning glances, but she ignored them. Her role in this charade was complete, and whatever was about to unfold did not concern her directly. She left the room without so much as a backward glance. The tension in the air thickened as all eyes shifted to the altar. There, standing atop it with an aura of oppressive malice, was none other than Issei Hyoudou. His cold, piercing gaze swept across the room, taking in the stunned faces of those who had once been allies, friends, and even loved ones. His expression was devoid of warmth, his posture exuding contempt and unshakable confidence. His dark attire, adorned with the tribal-like time-breaker mask that glowed ominously, added an almost divine terror to his presence. Gasps of shock rippled through the crowd. The Gremry peerage were the first to react, their expressions shifting from disbelief to fury. RageRevan clenched her fists so tightly her nails dug into her palms, her crimson hair seeming to flare with her anger. Beside her, Kiba and Zenobia reached for their weapons instinctively, their muscles tense and ready for combat. Akeno was seething in fury when she saw the killer of her father show up to this very auspicious occasion that was supposed to make Akeno happy was going to the opposite. The leaders of the factions, Surzex, Michael, and several others, exchanged grim glances, their expressions dark. Meanwhile, Kenji's face twisted into a mask of livid rage. His fists trembled at his sides, his body radiating an intense fury that seemed to simmer just beneath the surface. Even Valley's team, scattered among the audience, bristled at Issei's audacity. Drake and Albion, the great heavenly dragons bound to their respective hosts, roared in fury, their voices shaking the very foundations of the hall. Issei, unfazed by the hostility directed at him, let his smirk grow wider. His posture was eerily calm, almost regal, as he spread his arms theatrically, as if welcoming the collective hatred of the room. "Wow!" Issei began, his tone thick with mockery. "I must admit, quite the function you've got here. Really pulling out all the stops, aren't you?" His eyes locked onto Kenji, and his smirk twisted into something cruel. "Kenji," he said, his voice feigning warmth. "Been a while, hasn't it? I see you've managed to claw your way into some semblance of happiness. Good for you." Kenji's body trembled with barely contained fury. "You have no right to be here, Issei," he snarled, his voice echoing with the weight of his anger. "After everything you've done, after the lives you've destroyed, you think you can just show up here and mock us?" Issei soon spoke with a tone feigning sadness and despair. "Ah, and here I thought you would be happy seeing your cousin here." Kenji was clenching his fist to the point of drawing blood with some of it falling from his hand. Issei then tilted his head, his smile sharpening into something predatory. "Mock you? Oh, dear cousin, I'm not here to mock you." His tone grew darker, his single visible eye glowing with a malevolent light. "I'm here to enlighten you. To show you how pathetic your so-called justice truly is. You speak of love, kindness, and hope, but all I see are delusions built on lies and betrayal." He chuckled softly, the sound chillingly similar to a divine judgment. "You all disgust me," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Like insects clinging to the scraps of a dying world. You build your fragile peace on the suffering of others and dare to call it righteous." The crowd erupted into chaos. Murmurs of confusion and disbelief mingled with shouted accusations and demands for answers. The dragons roared once more, their fury threatening to boil over into action. But Issei raised a hand, silencing them with a single gesture. His aura darkened, a palpable wave of malice washing over the room. "You're all so eager to fight, so quick to blame me for your failures. But let's not forget." He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper that carried through the hall. "It was your betrayal that created me." His words struck like a hammer, silencing even the most vocal of his detractors. The sheer conviction in his tone was more terrifying than any physical threat. "And besides, despite what many would presume, I am not here to actually oppose your wedding. I mean, I could do what I did to RageRevan a while back." Issei pointed to RageRevan, who started to lose some of her anger and start trembling when Issei had ruined her wedding. The memory was etched inside of her brain all too well. Akeno was also shivering, the memory of what happened too fresh. Issei then spoke. "Well, I will let the show finally begin." Issei brought out the golden tiger claws much to Kenji's shock, as Surzex demanded. "What are you going to do?" "Well, how about you see for yourself, the wedding won't be complete with the special guest." Drake was seething when he saw one of his treasures being used, as he and Kenji watched a golden portal arrive next to him. The golden portal shimmered in the wedding hall, attracting everyone's attention. Soon Hel arrived with a smile on her face, as she spoke. "Took you a while to get me." Hel looked at the guests with a varied expression. She turned her attention to Akeno, who was shivering, while having an angered look at the ones that truly killed her father. Hel then spoke. So you are Barakiel's daughter, correct? Never have we met in person. Akeno was getting even more furious at this. She remembered encountering Hell during the pavilion exhibit when she had made her presence known to her. She then continued. Besides, it would be a shame that the father doesn't arrive for her beloved daughter's wedding. Akeno lost some of her anger and started to become worried. Plus, I know how excited he was when this event would happen. Akeno started to shake when Hell mentioned this. She was tearing up as Hell continued to make her statement. You see, hybrid. When I slay and revive someone as my undead, I can hear their thoughts and actions. I can also sense their emotions. He really wished to see his daughter's engagement, and how cruel would I be if I denied my people's last wishes. Hell soon snapped his fingers. As a magic circle was summoned beside her, Kenji got in front of Akeno to protect her. To their surprise, someone raised from the dead. It was none other than the deceased Barakiel. Akeno. The reanimated corpse spoke with a hollow tone, which made Akeno shake in response. Her entire body was shaking as tears fell from her eyes. She then spoke with a hoarse and hollow tone. Father. Barakiel started to walk towards her in a shaky and mangled motion. He only stopped a few feet later, as Hell spoke with a sinister smile on her face. You see, Akeno, I am not such an evil goddess. I fulfilled your father's final wish. Now his soul will remain with me for all eternity. Hell spoke with a sinister tone. She motioned Barakiel to fly to her, which he did so by releasing his skeletal wings, and flew towards her. He then bowed before Hell. As she pulled his chin up, he then spoke. Just like the fallen angels under me, I have gotten an army like I always wanted but was denied by the one Issei calls Allfucker. This is nice, having a cadre serving under me. Odin, who was also present, was gritting his teeth in fury hearing this. He wanted to put Hell in his place, but given the situation, he was aware they could escape. Drops of tears were falling on the ground, as Akeno murmured with horror seeing on how he is behaving. He was nothing but a slave to Issei. Kenji had enough, as he lunged onto Hell in his crimson armor with anger in his eyes, only for Issei to move to the side and bring out a keyblade, and stab him in the stomach, piercing his armor like butter, making him cough up saliva. Kenji! Drage shouted with horror. Issei scowled when he heard Drake's voice, as he spoke. Kenji Hyoudou, you remind me of my past self, who would charge at an enemy without any planning. You sicken me, now be gone. Issei slammed him, sending him flying across several stories. The girls that loved him and others that cared for him shouted. Kenji, Kenji-kun, Kenji-senpai, Kenji-san. Many rushed to him without hesitation, with Asuya using healing magic to keep him alive. However, it was off no effect. Issei looked at this with contempt in his eyes, with Akeno exclaiming with tears. I have lost my parents. I don't want to lose you too. Issei then spoke, turning to Hell. Using Barakiel. You are more evil than I am. Hell spoke while placing her hand on a chest, feigning sadness. You wound me, Issei. Issei smirked sinisterly as Barakiel soon started to fade away. Issei looked at the Gremry peerage and Issei's former friends with anger in his eyes. The care they showed Kenji was even more they showed him. Did they always hate him from the beginning and wanted him eliminated and replaced? Before his thoughts could be complete, someone tried to ambush him from the behind, as it was revealed to be Surzex, who had his hand coated in destruction, but Issei grabbed it and transformed into his Super Saiyan. Impossible. Surzex exclaimed, trying to overpower him, but Issei didn't budge. He was much stronger at the moment towards him. Issei then spoke mockingly while twisting his hand. Attacking from the behind, you filthy super bat. You are a coward, aren't you? He struggled to break free. He tried to transform into his true form, but Issei placed his hand in front of him, speaking. Don't get too cocky, Siscon. Before Surzex could react, Issei fired a powerful ki blast that completely consumed him, as if nothing could stop the point-blank blast. The super devil screamed in pain, as an explosion consumed him. Surzex-sama, and I-sama. Grafia and Rias shouted at the same time, afraid of what is going to happen to him. Soon his body fell to the ground, as he was breathing heavily. Grafia and Rias rushed to him, seeing his state. He was not too bruised but was slightly injured. Issei saw Grafia and knew what he had to do. He looked at Hell and spoke. It's time we take what we came here for. Hell nodded, as Issei soon blitzed forward and fired a powerful ki blast, sending both of them flying towards the wall, making them cough up blood. Grafia tried to assist, as she angrily glared at Issei, coating her fists with ice ones. She was ready to punch him, but Issei acted quickly, punching her in the gut, making her cough up in response. She coughs up, falling unconscious with him speaking. She is what we came here for. He soon carried the maid like a sack of potatoes. Hell soon joins him, and places her hand on him, as he places his 2 fingers on his head. Serzex, who knew that Issei was going to escape, shouted. Someone stopped them from taking Grafia. Many tried to lunge on him, with the leaders also doing the same, but it was too late. Issei and Hell were long gone, with Office also leaving during the chaos. They were all horrified by what they were seeing. Serzex could only scream in agony. His wife was taken by his biggest enemy as a price. Issei once again won, and this time took Grafia away from him, along with ruining the second wedding. Scene change. North Sentinel Island, Maldives, India, 8:30 p.m. Grafia was unconscious, as Office was seemingly working on her body. She had placed her hand on her chest, waiting for the right time. Soon a piece jolted out from her body, making her exclaim in pain. This was the queen piece that Serzex had. So what should we do with this piece? Office asked emotionlessly, as Issei responded. Leave it here, besides I know exactly how to get my new maid to be more complaint. Issei touched her face and caressed it, as he continued. Such beauty, yet such naivety. Issei? Hell asked with a confused tone, as she continued. May I ask why her? What reason is she needed for? Why not kill her like the rest of the bats like we planned? Simple, cause during the final battle against Trihexa. Serzex had placed a hypnosis spell on Grafia so that she doesn't end up dying during the final battle. He wanted someone to raise Milikas, in an event that he does end up dying. She has no clue on why I was imprisoned, and why I even became a criminal. However, her loyalty with Serzex is too strong, that is why I ended up kidnapping her. Issei explained to the two, as they nodded in response, understanding the situation at hand. Hell knew that Issei needed a maid, but that begged the question. What will he do next? Now on how I will control her. It will be simple. You see, in my previous life as Zamasu, my former master Gawasu taught me a trick known as memory wipe, which can easily erase the memories of anyone that I want to. I will erase all memories belonging to the time she was with the Gremory family, and then alter it, make the memories into the ones that show that she was serving me. Once I am done, Grafia will be a blank slate, for us to control. Issei spoke with a sinister grin. He then placed his hand on Grafia's head, channeling his ki into her mind, focusing on the neural or spiritual pathways that store memories. The energy disrupts or overwrites the mental or spiritual imprints of specific memories, effectively erasing the memories with her husband and son along with her family. She screamed in pain during this procedure, as tears started to fall from her eyes. She was helpless and powerless during this procedure. Hell and Office had cold looks on their faces. Issei smirked, knowing the next time she sees her husband, she will detest and resent him. After a while, Grafia stopped crying. But her tears didn't stop. She stopped screaming as Issei grew a smirk on his face. He looked at the two, and spoke, sensing the ki of several individuals. These were fortunately human. It's done. Let's head back before the indigenous mortals show up and attack us. Issei pointed to some people rushing towards them. Hell and Office nodded, as Issei used the golden tiger claws and teleported back to Australia. Scene change. Issei's house, Australia, Sydney, 10:30 p.m. Grafia was seen sleeping in one of the beds that was offered to her. She was sleeping soundly, unaware that her whole mind has changed. Her loyalties now belong to Issei instead of Serzex, and she will serve Issei completely with all of her soul and body. Grafia, once you wake up, you will serve me with all of your heart. Sweet dreams, my maid. Issei walked out of the room. He left the maid to rest for the night, knowing she would be awake soon. She will serve him unconditionally, without any problems and without any hassle, and once Serzex is eliminated, Grafia will be his for all eternity. Grafia had soon woken up, rubbing her eyes in response when she did. She looked around, seeing herself in a darkened yet familiar room. She then spoke with a low tone. Where am I? This place, it is familiar. Grafia muttered to herself. She recognized the place all too well. She removed the quilt that was placed on her body and walked towards the door. Despite not ever visiting the mansion, she remembered every detail and every location by the back of her mind. She knew where she had to move whenever she had to do so. She looked to see Issei sitting on his couch watching the news. He had a smirk on his face, looking at the damage that had happened in the wedding. He could see the news articles written on the mobile device. Akeno Himejima and Kenji Hyodo's wedding ruined. The pillar of the faction targeted by Issei Hyoudou. Graphia Lucifuge gone missing. Has Issei Hyoudou claimed another victim? Lucifer in despair. Surzex's wife vanishes amid faction turmoil. Who can stop Issei Hyoudou? Former Red Dragon Emperor's fury threatens the supernatural world. Can Issei Hyoudou be stopped? Pantheons left in despair. Fear spreads across the factions. Can Kenji's words bring hope amid the anarchy? Issei had an amused grin on his face. He could see the fear increasing at every step. The news in the supernatural world spreads even more faster than it does in the human world, such that even the human world pales in comparison to how fast news spreads from one world to another. Soon enough, his attention spreads across the key he sensed. As he turns to see Graphia, who had woken up, he then spoke with a smirk. Ah, Graphia. You took quite the time to wake up. Graphia soon walks to him, and kneels down bowing in front of him. She then speaks with an apologetic tone. I apologize for my tardiness due to overworking. It won't happen again, Lord Issei. She looks at him with a tone full of determination, causing Issei's smirk to widen even more, since that was the name that Issei wanted Graphia to call her master, especially in front of Surzex. He knew that this was the effects of memory wipe on the Lucifer's former queen and wife. She was now completely subservient and loyal to Issei while also being changed, as opposed to the Graphia that served Surzex with all of her heart while still being dominant over him. He wanted to eliminate that pride of hers. She is still the same Graphia, but she won't raise her hand on him like she did with Surzex. She will still be serious and aggressive when it comes to looking after the well-being of her master, as well as being strict with herself. But she won't cross certain lines like she did with Surzex. Make sure it doesn't. Issei spoke while losing his smirk, as he continues. Now get me some coffee. As you wish, Lord Black. Graphia went inside the kitchen and prepared some coffee. She soon came after a while with a cup of coffee and placed it down. He then picked up the coffee and started to drink it. Oh, it's good. Graphia only gave a gentle smile to him. Issei had taken a look at it, and was reminded of a time long before he had even become black. Long before he was nothing but an ordinary human boy. He had a feeling that he would have never awakened as Goku Black had it not been for his terrible life. He shook his head at the thought, as Graphia walked behind him and started to push her hands forward. Issei was ready for any attack and wondered if there was some fault with the memory wipe he had installed. However, to his surprise, she started to gently massage him, as she spoke with a happier tone. Master, does this make it better? I thought of maybe massaging you as an apology for my tardiness. Issei felt the effects of the massage, as he exclaimed with joy. You are certainly a wonder. It's a good thing that you are here. Graphia only giggled seeing this reaction. Her memories were altered in such a manner that she had been serving Issei for several years at this point. She was hired by him years ago, and has been with him ever since. She had served him unconditionally for a very long time, only having a decent pay on a monthly basis, which she uses for her own expenses. They had some time together, with Graphia tending to her master's every need and desires to the fullest. She even offered Issei a lap pillow if needed, but the latter declined it due to wanting to train more for the time being. The maid understood this completely without hesitation. The next day. Lilith, Underworld, 9:30 a.m. Chaos reigned across the supernatural world. Fear gripped the masses, especially in the underworld, where whispers of Issei Hyoudo's rampage grew louder with every passing day. His latest actions, subduing Surzex and Kenji, abducting Graphia Lucifuge, and destroying the wedding of Kenji and Akeno, left a trail of devastation that no faction could ignore. The once beloved savior of the factions had become their greatest nightmare, a force of vengeance who sought retribution for the betrayal that had shattered his life. He had annihilated the fallen angels, leaving none alive. Now, the devils feared they were next on his list. Amidst the paranoia, arrogance still lingered among some. Certain devils, blind to the scale of Issei's power, believed they could bring him down. They dismissed his feats, defeating the Gremry siblings, injuring Kenji with ease, and wielding treasures akin to the Longinus, as mere flukes. But those with insight, like the clan heads and elders of the underworld, knew better. Something that all supernatural beings, excluding Kenji and Drake, are unaware of. In the grand hall of the underworld, a heated council meeting was underway. The clan leaders and elders debated fiercely, their voices echoing in the massive chamber. We can't let him get away with this. We must mobilize our forces. One of their elders shouted with anger. The kidnapping of a Lucifuge devil, who was also Surzex's queen, was something that was unforgivable. Hunting him down is our only option. We send and double the devils to hunt them down. Our priority is to recover Lucifuge alive. Another exclaimed in anger, as they valued Graphia Lucifuge for her blood of being part of a near-extinct clan, with only 2 known surviving members of the clan left. But how can we stop someone of this magnitude? He is much stronger than before. You all remember he survived the Samael's poison, correct? One of the elders pointed out, as Lord Phoenix responded. Not only that, he has also killed my son. He killed Rovo Phoenix without any mercy. Yes, we need to find a way to stop him. Lord Agars responded angrily, as Lord Baal spoke with fury. See, I told you. I told you all that he is going to be a threat. We know he is one, Andrew. Zekrom responded, as he continued with a sigh. Now the question remains, how will we counter and eliminate him? Like I said, we mobilize our forces. We are going to need as many devils as we need to destroy him. We need to make a powerful spell to eliminate him for God. The first elder who had shouted earlier had exclaimed once again. He knew that the only way to defeat Issei was to gather more forces and eliminate him for good. But how? He has been powerful enough to wipe out all fallen angels. No one survived his onslaught. Another elder exclaimed with anger and helplessness. However, someone's voice soon boomed in response, as she called out. Enough. Everyone turned to see Sarah fall Leviathan with an angered and cold look on her face. The yelling annoyed her to no bounds. She was unhappy, no furious, at what happened to Graphia, who was a close friend of hers. She was taken and abducted right in front of her eyes. To add it off, Issei was strong enough to hold off Surzex in his true form of destruction, and needless to say, it made her really furious. We won't be garnering our forces. Seraphal exclaimed with anger. Before the elders responded, Seraphal added. We will only be sending our forces to the slaughterhouse. If he has killed the fallen angels, what hope does our kind have against him? The elders remained silent. Along with the clan heads, they were furious at what Seraphal had said, but they knew she was not wrong in any manner. They were helpless in that manner, as Lord Baal spoke. So what should we do? We will contact Hades. Contact him for gaining Samael's poison. I am pretty sure he has caught wind of Issei's actions, so he'll help us. I have already spoken to the Greek pantheon, and they have already started to convince Hades to help us. The elders were uncertain, along with the clan heads. They are aware of how Hades sees their kind. He sees them similar to how Issei does see them. Hades saw devils as nothing but bats, and the fallen angels as crows. Many of the elders were expecting him to side with Issei due to how much he detests them and the fallen angels, and given that he is doing a favor by exterminating them. Lord Agars then spoke. That is fine, Lady Leviathan, but how will we convince him to side with us? Seraphal had a smirk plastered on her face. She knew that this would be a successful way to get Hades on their side, as she spoke. We will, after all, the enemy of an enemy is a friend. All we need to do is to get Hades on our side by showing how much of a threat he is. Then we can ask him for Samael's poison. That way, he can work with us and we finally gain victory against Issei. Seraphal spoke happily with a smirk, akin to a child getting what he wants. The leaders and clan heads all agreed to do this. However, to their surprise, suddenly claps started to be heard. I must admit, quite the amazing plan to get me killed. Right, Sarah-chan. They all turned around to see Issei leaning beside the wall of the room while still clapping. A mocking grin plastered on his face, as he spoke. Shame it is not going to work and fall terribly just like most of your shows. How pathetic and foolish must you be considering your shows entertain people. How pathetic. He continued, his tone dripping with derision. Relying on a god who despises you to deal with your problems. Typical bats. Seraphal gritted her teeth in anger. The reason she hates Issei was because of his show, Oppai Dragon, gaining even more popularity than the magical girl Leviathan. She despises Issei because of this. She then demanded, how did you get in here? Correct, there is a barrier that should have stopped you. Issei turned to see Ziasidus Gremry, his former future father-in-law, who had spoken. He looked at the man with contempt, losing whatever smirk he had plastered on his face, looking at him coldly, as he spoke with slight anger. I have my ways that you don't need to know. Ziasidus could be seething in response of Issei. He hated Issei even more after what he did to Rias during her wedding day, completely ruining it and scaring his daughter, but before a response could be made, Issei dashed forward to him, much to his surprise. He is fast. Many of the elders thought in fear and shock, seeing that this was the man that had exterminated the entire fallen angel race. Zamasu lost his anger, and became annoyed as Issei pointed his hand to his chest in a gun-like motion. He then spoke with a smirk. "Well, father-in-law, you are quite weak to not sense me coming here and stopping me. I still remember you and that filthy brown bat trying to get me to marry RageRevan even more, but when I was weak, you were the first to discard me, amongst the in-laws that is. Then, when I come back to rightfully bring justice and set things right in this world, you are mad at me." Zamasu had a look that screamed anger and fear. He was sweating nervously knowing Issei can kill him in an instant if he wants to. He was furious at this, but also was fearful of him. In his eyes, the fact that a weak human was able to reach the levels that some gods even struggled to do so. "But I won't stop, father-in-law. Even if you growl, I won't stop, and I want you to see you beg for mercy. Otherwise..." Issei's hand starts to glow with a purple key energy causing Zamasu to shake with fear and terror, fearing on what Issei would do to him. There would be no fun. After all, a filthy stain like you begging for mercy is what I am looking forward to. He soon raises his other hand, placing it near his head. "You always were a coward," Issei sneered. "The only reason you are powerful is because of your equally cowardly and moronic son Serzex. You mocked me and looked down on me when I had lost Rage to my foolish cousin. And now look at you, quaking in fear before the same man you underestimated." Zamasu paled, sweat dripping down his face as Issei's energy flared ominously. Please," he stammered. Issei's smirk returned, cruel and predatory. "Begging already? How disappointing. I thought I'd at least get some entertainment out of you." Seraphal widened her eyes at what Issei was going to do, as she shouted, "Everyone, we need to leave now." Before anyone could react, Issei's raised hand glowed with a sinister purple energy. Too late. With a flick of his wrist, the energy erupted in a massive explosion, engulfing the entire hall in a blinding light. The screams of the elders and clan leaders were drowned out by the deafening roar of destruction. Many of them were killed in an instant of what had happened. The building exploded, leaving nothing behind. The onlookers were screaming in fear and terror at what had just happened in the location, as Issei teleported outside the building, speaking with a smirk and tone full of malice. "Foolish bats, thinking they have overpowered us in every manner. Yet, so fragile their bodies and egos are." When the dust settled, the grand hall was nothing but a smoldering ruin. Survivors crawled from the wreckage, their bodies battered and their spirits broken. Issei appeared outside the ruins, his smirk widening as he surveyed the devastation. He looked at Seraphal, who was one of the survivors, looking at him in anger and fear. There was desperation and hopelessness in her eyes. Zamasu and Lord Agars were the other survivors that had managed to survive the onslaught. "You won't get away with this." Issei didn't respond, looking at her with a mocking tone. "I believe I just did. I purged the elders from this world. Well, most of them, because I want the survivors to send a message. You also, Seraphal." Issei spoke with a mocking tone, causing her to grit her teeth in fury. She wanted to make Issei pay and tried to bring out magic, but her wounds are too severe even for her to handle. Pathetic, that was a ki blast enough to wipe out an entire continent. "I am amazed that a filthy bat like you managed to survive." Issei spoke with a gleeful tone, enjoying the pain and torment Seraphal was enduring. She was one of the few that gloated on his suffering, and she shall also meet the same fate as he once did. Seraphal got really furious at this, as she screamed with fury and agony. "Screw you, Issei Hyoudou." Issei narrowed his gaze, as he spoke with a cold tone. "Even now, you dare defy against justice. There is only one solution for filth like you." Issei blitzed towards Seraphal and with a powerful ki towards her face. Her having a look of anger plastered on her face, but there was also a lingering fear, afraid of the solution that he posed to her. She hated on how Issei saw them as lower life forms. Good riddance. Issei fired a ki blast aimed at her face. She was about to teleport, but there was nothing she could do. He fired the ki blast, making her screech in pain from being completely consumed. There was nothing she could do, or even anyone to save her from the former pillar of the factions. She was killed without any mercy and couldn't even teleport due to the pain she was experiencing. "Seraphal!" Zamasu shouted with agony, seeing on how Issei mercilessly wiped her out. He had tears in his eyes due to his broken bones and injuries coupled with Seraphal's death. Many were looking at Issei with fear, seeing on how he effortlessly killed a Satan-class devil like it was nothing to him. Let this be a reminder, those that oppose justice shall meet the same fate as her. Goodbye, and pray to Lucifer for your day. The day of reckoning will come for you soon, all of you will suffer for the wrath of justice. Issei placed his hand on his forehead and teleported out of there. There was nothing the devils could do, as he once again managed to escape without any effort. He vanished into thin air, leaving the devils to grapple with the weight of their failure and the terror of what was yet to come. Scene change. Issei's house, Sydney, Australia, 5:30 p.m. Ah. You can't just teleport and have fun without me, Issei. Hell exclaimed with an annoyed tone, as Issei only glanced at her and scoffed. She soon walked to him, pointed her hand on his face and responded. Take me next time. Do I make myself clear? Issei was seemingly annoyed by this insolence, but unlike Seraphal, Hell was different. She wanted to help, and there was no doubt in that. She made it clear that she didn't want to be left out as well. He then pushed her hand aside and spoke with slight annoyance. Fine, you are lucky that you are useful to me. Issei walked away, as Hell could only look at him annoyed before groaning in frustration. Ophis walked to her, and responded with a sigh. Hell, you know how he is, right? Yeah, still it annoys me on how he gives me the cold shoulder, and yet he treats you with such affection and kindness. It is frustrating. I wonder if Saiyans are always like this, cold and barbaric. Ophis looked at her for a moment, before shaking her head in response. She then spoke with a normal yet emotionless tone. You can't help it, I'd say, given his incarnation. It is a miracle that he is even working with us. Goku Black wouldn't have hesitated to even kill us or humans given his callous and ruthless nature. I guess. Hell responded, with an unamused tone. She was not a fan of how Issei does things. She can see him changing slowly by slowly and day after day, but it was frustrating in her eyes that Issei does things without informing her about anything. She wondered if all Saiyans are like this, or is it just him? Hell, give him time. If he can tolerate and care for me now. That means, despite Goku Black being his incarnation, he still has qualities that pertain to Issei. They are a merged entity having the personality and traits of both Black and Issei at once. Ophis explained to Hell, who could only give a frustrated sigh. She decided to take a deep breath, knowing that Issei was still a part of the merged entity. Anyways, I will prepare some food. It should get me distracted enough to move on with my work. Ophis, you want to help? Ophis shrugged and responded. Sure, why not? But please don't turn on him. I won't. He is the reason why Odin is in such an edge, and those bats and crows are getting what they deserve. He is why I am out here, fighting for a purpose, cause I'd be still the broken wine-drinking woman if it wasn't for him. Hell spoke with a small smile on her face. The day she met Issei was the best day of her life, despite him being cold and aggressive towards her. He still pushed her to fight for something worthwhile. Ophis looked at him, and gave a small smile. The two women then went and started to cook some food for Issei. The least they could do is make the Saiyan happy with his stomach, and at this point Hell knew how much Issei ate. More akin to a glutton. Scene change. Seraphal Memorial Hospital, Underworld, 10:30 p.m. Sirzex Lucifer stood before another funeral, his crimson eyes burning with a mixture of grief and seething rage. This time, the coffins bore the bodies of Seraphal Leviathan, the slain clan heads, and the elders who had perished in the devastating attack. The coldness of the coffin bore the weight of the bodies that were present, angering the Devil King. Some bodies weren't even there due to the obliteration by Issei Hyoudou. His hands clenched into fists so tightly that his nails dug into his flesh, drawing blood. The sharp pain was insignificant compared to the anguish and wrath boiling within him. As if losing Grafia to Issei Hyoudou wasn't enough of a blow, now he had to bear the deaths of Seraphal, one of his closest allies, and numerous leaders who had held the underworld together. To make matters worse, his father, Xiaticus, and the few surviving clan leaders were recovering in the hospital, battered and broken from the same attack. I should have killed him, Sirzex muttered to himself, his voice low but trembling with raw emotion. When he was weak, rotting in Tartarus, or even after Trahexa, I should have ended him when I had the chance. His crimson aura flared violently, the barely contained energy distorting the air around him. He gritted his teeth, his voice rising into a furious roar. That damned bastard. All he wants is to see us in misery. I will destroy him with my own hands. I will end him. The sudden outburst echoed throughout the chamber, causing those in attendance to flinch. Sirzek's fury was palpable, and his vow to eliminate Issei was clear. Milikus was devastated and furious when his own mother was taken away from him, and also agreed to support Issei in this. He was watching another one perish in front of him. Issei was no longer a hero in his eyes, but a monster in his eyes. He vowed to destroy him. He had to develop a plan of weakness against him. Seraphal may have perished during this attack, but she became a martyr to them, knowing her death didn't go in vain. She had given them the idea of killing Issei for good. However, before he could continue his plans, someone called out to them. Lord Lucifer. Serzex turned around to see a soldier speaking with a nervous tone. We have established contact with Lord Hades like Lord Zeocidus wanted us. He had informed us that Lady Seraphal intended to work with Lord Hades to contend against Issei despite his differences. And why wasn't I informed of this? Serzex asked with controlled anger, turning his glance to a devastated Sona Citri and Lady Citri. As if losing their father, husband to the sleeping sickness wasn't enough, now their sister, daughter was also killed by this man. Sona's voice broke the silence, trembling but resolute. Seraphal, she wanted to protect us all. Even if it meant aligning with someone like Hades. Her death, it can't be in vain. Serzex, who heard this from a distance watching WHIS and her peerage alongside Kenji consoling Sona. He clenched his fists in anger at this, detesting Issei even more, as he spoke with a firm tone. His anger resurfacing at every step. She won't be, Serzex said firmly, though his anger still simmered beneath the surface. Hades may despise us, but he won't ignore the chaos Issei is causing. If Seraphal believed he would help, then we'll continue where she left off. He saw Sona's mother speak up in response. If it means stopping that monster, I'll give everything I have to ensure it. Serzex straightened, his resolve renewed. Prepare for a council. I want every surviving leader informed. We'll contact Hades immediately and make it clear that Issei Hyoudou must be dealt with. For Seraphal's sacrifice, for Grafia, for our people, we will not let him destroy everything we've built. The soldier bowed and hurried off to carry out the orders, leaving Serzex staring into the coffin before it was finally buried. His heart ached with loss, but his mind burned with determination. Issei, he muttered under his breath, his fists clenching once more. This time, there will be no escape. Scene change. Issei's house, Sydney, Australia, 12 a.m. Issei was with Ophis, Grafia and Hel, who were all discussing their next plans for their enemies. Issei had a feeling that it was time to find a way to gain his immortality. From Goku Black's memories, he remembered that he needed to find a way to do so, in this timeline. I can only presume the Dragon Balls don't exist in this world, correct? Issei asked bluntly, to which Ophis responded. Correct, cause if such a powerful wish-granting dragon did exist, I am pretty sure the factions would have abused it to no ends. Tell me about it. Just the thought of locating immortality, true immortality from its super variant, would have been given the most priority from almost everyone, and I mean everyone. Hel mused, remembering on how her father would have gone out of his way to have procured the Super Dragon Balls to make himself unstoppable. She also knew that the other factions would have done so as well. I see, then that only gives us one choice of attaining true immortality, and that is to steal the divine elixir Amrita from the Hindu faction. And I know of a perfect way to get there. Issei spoke with a smirk as he brought out the golden tiger claws, as he continued. These claws have an innate way to get me directly to the Amrita. We need to make ourselves unpredictable, as much as we can if we need to win against them. But if things do go south, Master, you have a plan. Amrita is not easily consumed or located, correct? Grafia commented in response, being well aware of the dangers that are posed when Amrita is tried to locate it. It is highly secured inside of the ocean of milk, where only those that are selectively chosen by Indra or Sakra himself can enter the location. Yes, I do. We retreat if Amrita does harm my body. It is the price of immortality that I must pay. Nothing comes off as cheap. Issei explained, as he continued. Let it be pain or anything. Once I gain this amount of immortality, no one in the supernatural world will be able to stop me. Issei spoke with a small smirk on his face, as Ophis asked emotionlessly but with seriousness. Retreating, or I can assist you in taking down these gods. They shouldn't stand a chance against me. Ophis spoke with conviction in her tone, as Issei was about to retort, but Ophis spoke. No, Issei, they betrayed their trust in me as well. I have seen that with my very eyes, their lies and false claims. Even someone like Shiva is not exempt from their deeds. They will all suffer for their betrayal. Ophis spoke emotionlessly, but Issei could sense there was anger in her tone. Issei could only nod, as he continues. The Amrita will harm the negativeness present in my body. It is a challenge I must conquer. Shouldn't you be immune to its effects given that you are a Shinjin, Ko Shin, as well? Hel asked with confusion, as Issei shakes his head and responds. It is hypothetical. Either the Amrita would meld with my body or destroy it completely. And I won't let any liquid destroy me, not this time. Hell could only nod, sensing the tone of determination. He then continued with a deep breath, bringing out a small image that showcased the ocean of milk, along with two sides clashing for dominance, the Devas, Hindu gods, and the Asuras. Additionally, the one they are clashing against was pulling what seemed to be a serpent-like rope which belonged to a Naga. Ophis recognized this event immediately, widening her eyes as she muttered in response. The Samudra Manthan. Correct, also called the churning of the milk. To put it in short, this event was known to produce the miracle drug Amrita in huge amounts, which many Hindu gods have consumed, making them the immortal Hindu gods. Even Indra became the powerhouse of a god that he is today because of consuming this. Beings that are conceited like him don't deserve this immortality, ruling over us with an iron fist. Anyways, there have still been some Amrita that is left. Issei explained with the others listening intently, as he continued. In the aftermath, many rewards were granted to both sides. Asuras and Devas both gained something in return, and yet despite this conflict between both sides still remained. Once we gain this milk, we should leave this place. However, we need to keep in mind that the place that this is guarded with Indra soldiers, primarily Gandharvas, which are horse-like beings, and Apsaras, beautiful enchantresses that can even charm the gods if they wanted to. Aside from that, we will be needing to deal with the Hindu gods, and possibly the Trimurti as well. Issei ended the explanation to the three, who nodded in agreement. They understood on what they need to do, as Issei spoke while bringing out the third treasure. The golden finger, which can stop anything for a short while. This can stop anyone from coming in front of us. The Gandharvas and gods can also be stopped by this finger. I will give this to you, Ophis. You will be needing to hold them off till then. Ophis nodded in response, taking the treasure and accepting it. Although she can kill them, she will wait for Issei's choice, as he soon walks to Hell and speaks. After that, Hell, you can use your explosion seals and soldiers to kill them off. It would be easy for you, correct? Hell nodded and spoke with a smile. Yep, a piece of cake, and soon they'll be part of the army. Issei nodded as he spoke. We will begin our plan now. The two nodded as Graphia spoke with concern. Please come back safe, all of you. The trio nodded as Issei opened the portal using the golden tiger claws straight to the Amrita, which was located in the ocean of milk. They knew what they had to do in order to get the milk. Issei had a feeling there could be traps, as he created a massive ki blast and fired them around the entire location. He kept firing them till he would find something, creating explosions everywhere. Ophis had put a barrier around herself and held to check what was going on, only to hear screams of pain and agony along with shattering of something. Issei soon stopped the firing as he waited patiently for the dust settling. Once he saw that the dust settled, he could see the corpses of Gandharvas and several destroyed contraptions that were present surrounding the location. Soon enough, the doors opened, revealing many beautiful maidens known as Apsaras and Gandharvas. They were shocked and furious at this, as the Apsara leader exclaimed, "Get them!" Before they could do anything, Ophis used the golden finger to freeze them in place. They were frozen solid and unable to move. Hell acted quickly, planting explosive seals on them, as she exclaimed in a quick motion. Explode. The seals exploded, killing them in an instant, causing them to scream in pain. Hell soon brought out a magic circle and released mist, reviving them as her slaves from the dead. The Apsaras and Gandharvas that used to serve Indra now serve her. You all will be the eternal Rhapsody. That will serve me without any exception. No longer shall you serve Indra. Hell responded with a serious tone, as the undead nodded in response. Hell could feel herself get stronger, now having the knowledge and abilities of the undead that she gained, making her stronger than before. This was undead enhancement, since whenever Hell increases her undead legion, she would increase her abilities. She could feel herself get stronger, and the reason she was weaker than before was due to the lack of gaining access to her undead legion due to Odin cutting her off from her realm due to what Loki had done. Now she has full access to her undead legions, and no one returns to Helheim due to what had happened there with the prison break out of fear, and also for having no reason to do so since they believed Hell wouldn't visit that location unless she gets caught. She only had to enter the place once and revive her soldiers, which she did. In the meantime, Issei managed to gain the miracle drug, which was in the form of a glass of milk. He managed to get 2 of them, as he spoke with a dark smirk. The road to true immortality, in a mere cup. Interesting. He walked back to Ophis and Hell, as he spoke. I got the drug, should I take 1 more? Sure, get 2 more. Ophis suggested, curious to see how this drug would work. Issei managed to gain 2 more of the drug containers, as he spoke with a serious tone while sensing the key of several gods including the destroyer god Shiva and his family. It's time we leave, we got what we came here for. Issei spoke seriously as the trio entered the portal as Issei closed the portal. He knew that he had gained the miracle drug Amrita, the original one. Once they exited the portal, they decided to rest for the day in their houses, gaining the miracle drug successfully. Issei smirked at this, he had already received his ticket to immortality. Wait, I wanted to ask, how did they have Amrita? Wasn't it forbidden by the factions to do so in the treaty? Hell asked, as Issei nodded taking note of this. He then thought for a moment while looking at the sealed glass in his hand, and then responded. Making and churning the Amrita wasn't easy. It takes hours if not days of constant and continuous churning to even make a simplified version of one. At least 2 hours minimum is needed to do so. That is why Indra couldn't afford to lose even 1 cup of this liquid. He was able to convince them from keeping the ones made while asking them that they'll not make more. So they used their strength to their advantage. Ophis asked emotionlessly, as Issei nodded and explained. Yes and no, the factions understood the seriousness of the situation, but at the same time, the Hindu gods are strong. Denying them is like opposing Dharma, and they don't take kindly to those that did so. Ophis nodded, she can easily show these gods on how strong she really is. Even if she was at half of her current power, she can still put these gods in their place. She had to find her copy Lilith at all costs. Issei looked at her, and nodded, he then spoke. I'll locate your copy, worry not. Lilith is also on our side, right? Yes, she was also unaware about what is happening. Unfortunately, she is even more naive and gullible than me. She is with Baccared for now, since I asked her to wait in the dimensional gap till we meet her. Ophis explained to Issei, who nodded in response, as he made it his to-do list to meet up with the 2 of them, as he knew they'd be worried about him. He knew that he'd have to eliminate some more gods to get them off his back for a while, if he had to meet up with them. Back at the Hindu faction, they were horrified to hear that the Amrita had been stolen. Many were furious at the perpetrators who was responsible for this, with some believing that Issei managed to do so. However, Indra denied this. He was confident that Issei wouldn't be able to get inside due to only him being allowed to let anyone access to this location. Shiva, on the other hand, was starting to get afraid. If Issei really had taken the Amrita, the original one, then they are really screwed and must be ready for Armageddon. Issei was the first person to make the god of destruction of this world truly afraid of him. The Devas were looking at the carnage with horror and to some extent, anger as well. They had lost 4 glasses of Amrita, the original variants. Not the simplified variants that was taken away from them. Indra was furious at the turn of events, as he boomed with fury. Who dares infiltrate the location of sacredness? We don't know, my lord. All we know is that there was someone that managed to get in and destroy everything. Every single contraption and trap designed to capture Issei failed to capture this assailant. And we know that a barrier was placed in the ocean of milk to prevent anyone that you don't grant permission to. Indra nodded, being well aware of this. Whoever infiltrated this location was smart enough to get inside and steal the Amrita glasses from the location. Shiva walked forward and spoke seriously. Whoever did so, had found a way to do so. There is no possible way regular teleportation spell would work. Even a god-level spell would fail in comparison, Indra. Someone strong must have not only infiltrated in but also destroyed contraptions and viewing spells that my son Ganesha had developed. We aren't sure if this is Issei's doing either. Shiva spoke with a serious tone, since if this was Issei's doing, then he would be truly unstoppable, since the original Amrita is supposed to grant the user true immortality, but it wouldn't work if the user has some level of malice and hatred in their heart. He was hoping that it'd fail on Issei, if he were to ever get it. Despite this, it was his vision that made him really afraid of Issei. Gaining Amrita was one of the ways that he would become unstoppable. He remembered on how Issei became an unstoppable force of nature, if he becomes immortal. Flashback begins several weeks ago. Inside Shiva's vision, he saw a figure standing over the corpses of his children, all slain by a dark figure in the background. Tears were falling from his eyes, as he exclaimed with fury, "No!" He turned around trying to find any survivors. The whole Hindu factions were in flames, being burned to the ground in complete ruins. The sky was black and there were broken and destroyed buildings everywhere. Smokes were being released everywhere from this destroyed and broken faction. He rushed forward trying to find the one responsible. He was furious at what had happened. His faction purged in just one day. The attacker came out of nowhere and started slaughtering gods and divine beings effortlessly. Even Indra fell after a powerful clash between the two. Shiva was fearful at this entity, as he muttered to himself. Did Trahixa return? Shiva asked to himself with fear and terror in his voice, clearly afraid of this unknown threat. Someone fired multiple blasts of pure energy aimed at him, which he dodged. He wanted to find the one responsible for this, and to his surprise his wish was granted, but not in the way he expected. He soon saw a sight that would horrify him to no bounds. No. He turned to see Parvati, his wife, in the hands of an unknown enemy. Shiva, run. Save yourself? Parvati exclaimed with complete fear and desperation. The goddess was effortlessly defeated by this enemy. Despite entering into her Kali avatar, he was far more powerful than she could ever be. The figure had two red eyes glowing in the darkness. Parvati! Shiva shouted with fear seeing her state like this, as she exclaimed with tears. It's going to be alright. Try gathering others that will stop him. If we can't stop him, then... A glowing energy blast came from the entity's body, as Parvati looked at the entity with an expression of fear and anger. The blast was fired, completely consuming the goddess like it was nothing. Shiva could only watch in terror, anger and fear at how this one man was able to completely vanquish the entire pantheon that he was in. The strongest pantheon was wiped out completely. No. Shiva muttered in fear seeing his wife perish in front of him like his children. The dust soon settled, revealing the entity to be none other than Issei. Anger clouded the god of destruction's head, as he looked angrily at Issei, who only turned to him with a serious look, speaking. Rejoice, Shiva, all this happened because of you gods thinking yourselves above everyone, and look at what happened. Your children and wife are gone. Issei's serious look changed to that of a smirk, as he continued in response. Your pantheon is purged to complete annihilation. No god survived any attack that had happened, and because of you, I gained the motivation to gain immortality by consuming the true version of the miracle drug Amrita. Shiva was seething in fury seeing this, as in his anger he fired his destruction blast aimed at him, which he swatted like it was nothing, as he spoke. I told you before, it is useless to defy my justice. You gods brought destruction on yourselves, looking down on others not born or following your stupid dharma. It is one more reason why you miscreants must be purged. You! Shiva growled in anger, as he continued. You believe your own lies. Your foolish genocide as justice. Issei only grinned and responded to the god of destruction. I am aware that you don't understand the beauty of this. It is beyond the limitations of your feeble pride. Shiva in his anger was about to fire one more destruction energy blast, but Issei was quicker, clasping his hands. He unleashed a powerful beam of ki energy at him, as he exclaimed, Kamehameha. He obliterated the god, completely purging him from existence. All the while Shiva could only scream in pain from being obliterated, as when the dust settled. Issei spoke his final words, posing his hands forward declaring, Now justice and beauty of this world has been restored. Flashback ends. Shiva clenched his fists. There was no way he was going to let him win. No matter what happens, he growled in anger, vowing to destroy Issei before he gains a leverage against him by purging his family. The next day. Issei's house, Sydney, Australia, 10 a.m. Hel was walking inside the room. She looked at the sleeping posture of Issei, who had decided to get some sweets inside. He was resting on Graphia's lap, who had a worried expression on her face, and Ophis seated beside him using her snakes to assess his situation. The reason he was in this state, Issei had consumed a glass of Amrita, and it caused him immediate pain. This was due to his Saiyan body rejecting the Amrita. He was still breathing and alive, his body developing to this Amrita and melding with it to procure true immortality. How is he? Hel asked with concern, to which Ophis spoke. He is fine, he is breathing, and there has been serious changes in his body. One major change is that Samael's poison would no longer affect or even destroy his soul. It will still cause him unimaginable pain, but given his body, it would only make him stronger. It is still worrisome. Hel spoke with concern, as she continued. When I drank my Amrita, it didn't cause me too much pain. It is because you are a goddess, Hel, unlike Issei, who has divine ki and soul inside of a mortal body. Despite their strength, Saiyans are still considered mortal. His body and soul weren't compatible before, now it is becoming compatible due to the Amrita making. Ophis explained to the goddess of the dead, making her nod. Hel had a worried expression to her face. Ophis looked at her and asked, You care for him, don't you? I. Hel had a small blush on her face, as she continued. Of course I do. If he does die, then I may also suffer a fate worse than death. Plus, he is the reason why I have a fighting chance against them. Hell spoke with a solemn tone, as Ophis could only nod. It was evident that Hell cares for him by forcing him to do things that would benefit him, like basic cleanliness, and even getting him to have fun aside from him fighting all day and training in his training room, which was a gravity-enhanced training room, increasing the gravity of anyone that enters it. Hell developed this room, using magic and technology to control the metering. She did this by gaining the memories of the undead Valkyrie, allowing the Saiyan to train whenever he wanted, on the condition that he would wash himself after he trains every time. The goddess of death had a way to impose her conditions, making him compliant to her whims, several times, that is, not every time. I see. Ophis mused in response, as she continued. It seems like he is soon adapting. I wonder what is on his mind, since even I can't access it. Must be someone strong blocking it, Ophis-sama. Grafia responded, worried for her current master. Hell and Ophis looked at each other, knowing that bringing Grafia to the mansion was one of the best things that could have happened, since she helps with the chores completely without any problems. She even reduced the burden of Hell significantly ever since she had come here, allowing her to learn more of her powers and spells, improving her arsenal by a long mile than before. She would soon reach the levels of High God class, a power that only chief gods like Odin and Zeus could reach. Maybe we should wait for him to wake up. Grafia, keep an eye on him. Hell spoke with a serious yet gentle tone, earning a nod from the Lucifuge maid. She then responded with a normal tone. I will. I have been serving him for years, and looking after him is part of my job. Hell nodded, having a subtle smirk, knowing the memories planted in her was false thanks to Issei. She was happy serving him, even more so than she had served Surzek, since she doesn't have a serious and cold look every time, and has a gentle smile in several cases. Even now, Hell can see her smiling. The goddess of dead headed outside to get some food for him when he wakes up, knowing that Saiyans eat a lot, so he would be hungry since he barely had anything since breakfast. Scene change. Inside Issei's mindscape, 10:30 a.m. Issei looked around, wondering why he was once again in this location. He then spoke. Again, why am I here? Goku Black is gone now. He turned around, trying to find a way to get out of his mindscape, but soon came face to face with someone he never thought he'd ever see again, as the figure spoke. It appears we meet again, Zamasu. The figure was an angel, who was a tall, thin humanoid with pale blue skin, white hair, violet eyes, and rather effeminate features. He owns a long scepter with a gem that floats above it, and is usually seen holding it in his right hand. Around his neck floats a large light blue ring. His attire consists of a maroon robe, a black cuirass with the same white and orange diamond decorations, and a blue sash. He also wears black high-heeled shoes with long toes resembling winkle pickers with white spats. Or should I say, Issei Hyoudou. The figure's voice was cold and serious, being well aware on who he is. Issei was surprised seeing him here, as he asked, "What are you doing here, WHIS?" The now identified WHIS took a deep breath. The man in front of him was able to evade Zeno's erasure, and used reincarnation to save himself. He wanted to know what his current intentions are. I was curious, why would you reincarnate yourself in a new body? The body of a human. Given your mortal hatred. Issei shook his head immediately. WHIS was uncertain on his nature, his current nature. He is just a mere projection that he managed to project when he was able to find his divine key in a completely different dimension and world. I wanted to survive, and the body of this mortal was the best thing that I had. After Zeno erased me from this plane of existence, I managed to make my way to a different world. That is where I saw a couple pleading to their gods on having a successful child, and I reincarnated as their child. That was how I was able to survive, and as for my awakening, it didn't happen until a while after I was in this world. I was inactive, only waking up when my current incarnation was at his lowest. Issei explained to WHIS, remembering on how his parents wanted a successful child, with the angel attendant taking note of this. He peeked into his staff, trying to see more of Zamasu's current incarnation and the events that had transpired. I see. From what I can tell, you don't seem to purge the mortals in this world, not all mortals. My guess is the change in your current incarnation has affected your personality, as well as your goals. Interesting. Perhaps it is because of your new parents raising you well. Nice. WHIS commented on his past as Issei Hyoudou, being intrigued by his perversion and other techniques like dress break. Even then, aside from that, his life and actions were much more different than the ones he expected from the incarnation of Zamasu. Are you seeing everything? Issei asked with slight annoyance, to which WHIS responded while still looking at the glass ball. Yes, and I am amazed, never have seen this level of development. So what are you going to do? Given that you have been granted a second chance at life, even when it was not intended for you. Issei thought for a moment and spoke. My Zero Mortals plan will have a slight change. Instead of wiping out all mortals, I will wipe out all supernatural beings instead. WHIS asked, looking at the staff, seeing more of his past, seeing the betrayal that had happened, and with everyone abandoning him without a second thought, coupled with losing his parents, the only two people that cared about him. I see, so will humans be spared? Or mortals be spared? Issei shook his head and spoke seriously. Those that side with the supernatural will be purged, their filth needs to be cleansed, that is why I must eliminate them. I see. So from what I can conclude, you no longer want to exterminate everyone. That is quite the development. Even I can see Lord Beerus wanting to purge these supernatural beings for how conceited they are. Although, I can see his primary target to be Shiva and Surzex, given that they mock destruction in this world. Issei nodded upon this. WHIS was aware that Issei despises Surzex the most. He knew a conflict would be made given that they would want to kill the man in probably the most brutal manner if needed. WHIS turned away from the staff, with it losing the glow, as he spoke. So, that concludes our talk. Yeah, how did you even get here? Issei asked the angel, to which WHIS responded with a chuckle. He then spoke. I had to sense your divine key, which was not an easy feat. It took my consciousness traveling to multiple dimensions actually had a slight sliver of presence. Even then, I wasn't able to sense the key until now. Just a few days ago, which is when I made my mind to establish contact with you, when you entered your mindscape is when we finally had a chance to talk. And even now, I am amazed at what has happened. Despite this, I know Lord Beerus can or would physically visit this world due to our own personal reasons. WHIS explained to him, as he looked at Issei and responded. But I should be thanking the folks outside that were waiting for you, for being the reason why you changed for the better. Your body has become immortal, Issei. WHIS sensed the connection fading, knowing that he cannot maintain his consciousness in this world any longer, he then spoke. This would be the last time we are talking anyway. I can't keep my consciousness in this world. Goodbye, Issei. WHIS soon faded out, leaving Issei alone in his mindscape. He still was surprised that WHIS managed to track him all the way to the Draconic Deus, DXD, universe. He soon exited out of the mindscape with the others waiting for him. Scene change. Inside Issei's mindscape, 11:30 a.m. Issei woke up with a jolt, as he looked around to see Ophis and Graphia both surprised by his awakening. They looked at him with a confused manner, as Ophis asked. Issei. Yeah, it's me. How long was I out for? Issei asked, to which Ophis responded. 6 hours, you were out for 6 hours, do you feel anything different? Nothing physically, although I do feel myself get much more powerful. Issei spoke, as Graphia spoke with a happier and relieved tone. Master, I am glad that you are finally awake. If you would have. Issei cuts her off by placing his hand on her cheek and speaking. You needn't worry, no amount of force will destroy me. They are powerless to defy me and true justice. Graphia could only nod, as Hel arrived inside with a plate of food. She was accompanied by several undead Apsaras and Valkyries that assisted her in the food. She then spoke. Issei. She rushed to him, and spoke. You are awake. Issei nodded and spoke. Awake and better than ever. And it seems you got food. Mind if I? Hel didn't say anything and nodded. She motioned the undead corpses to bring a table and keep the food on them. Issei started to eat like he had not eaten for a very long time, rapidly eating the food, making Graphia surprised. Hel motioned to her, as she nodded, rapidly heading to the kitchen to prepare some food. Ophis was unaffected, knowing that this was how Saiyans eat, as she mused. He is back to normal, huh? Yeah. Hel had a smile on her face watching Issei eat her handmade food. She knew Issei loved her food a lot. She watched him eat endlessly, without any chance of stopping. He was hungry, barely eating anything for more than 12 hours and training almost every day. She watched him eat, as he continued to do so, with Graphia bringing several plates to his table with Issei eating without stopping. She looked at Hel and asked, Hel-sama, does Issei eat a lot? He does. His appetite is akin to all Saiyans, and he eats as if he never gets food. At first I got annoyed. Hel spoke with a normal tone, after pausing for a moment, seeing him gulp an entire jar of water like it is nothing. But now I am used to it, at least he doesn't drop his food everywhere. And we have enough budget to last us for a millennia. Drake's treasure did provide us the most useful. Honestly, it was collecting dust for the past several centuries. Hel mused with a slight mocking tone, as Ophis could only shake her head in disappointment and amusement. The treasure that Drake hid from the rest of the world was really something even she couldn't ignore, especially with some of them being powerful treasures that can be paralleled to the Longinus. True, I wonder if Albion would be kind to lend his treasures to us. Ophis spoke with an innocent tone, too innocent. She'll have to ask Great Red about the location from his dream ability. She wanted to see the look on his face when his treasures are also taken from this world. The others also decided to have their breakfast despite it being a bit late. They had prepared enough for themselves, and unlike Issei, they didn't have the appetite of a Saiyan. Scene change. Meeting room, Mount Kailash, India, 2 p.m. Shiva had immediately called a meeting for the Devas, Hindu gods. When the Amrita was stolen, he had no choice but to do so given that they had lost something valuable to the invaders. He then spoke. Everyone, I have some grave news. Shiva's words were making everyone worried. The other gods were contacted by this, as soon as they had arrived. He had to inform them on why he had contacted them in such a hurry. Shiva, what happened? Parvati, his wife, spoke with concern and fear. She had seen Shiva speak in a grave tone before, and when it is in a huge crisis like the Samudra Manthan, or when Asura gains a boon strong enough to destroy the world. He then spoke. Parvati, just recently there has been a breach in the ocean of milk. And worse, the original containers of Amrita were stolen. 4 of them were taken away yesterday night. You're kidding, right? It should be impossible to get in without Lord Indra's permission. Kartikeya, one of his sons, responded, as Ganesha added. Kartik is correct, I even added my own traps on your suggestion to prevent Issei from getting access to them. Then who could have stolen them? I believe it is Issei. He was able to infiltrate the location and gain them. He was powerful enough to infiltrate several events without being detected and lay mayhem and destruction wherever he went. Shiva spoke seriously, making many of the gods worried and angry at this. Several were furious at the blatant disrespect and disobedience of Dharma that Issei had committed. However, Indra had spoken. But I disagree, there must be another player in this. Could it be the Cows Brigade? Vishnu asked to his fellow gods, as Indra responded with a serious tone. Impossible, they should be gone after the fall of RageRevan. But there is a possibility that remnants could be active and manage to infiltrate inside. Vishnu retorted with a serious tone. He also had a hard time believing that Issei would want Amrita given that he only wants mayhem and destruction, primarily revenge against those that had ruined his life. However, he did take Shiva's words seriously, knowing that his vision of Issei destroying them could come out to be true. So what should we do? We need to take out 2 threats. Brahma spoke seriously. He was aware that Issei was now a threat to the very cosmic balance itself. He then continued. First being remnants that have possibly taken the drug Amrita, as well as Issei himself, whose power is skyrocketing at all times. Worse, he is using this power to attack us at every step. No one is safe until he is either sealed or eliminated. Second, we need to prevent this from happening ever again. A possibility of the drug being stolen by Issei can happen again. Brahma posed some very powerful and interesting points, making the gods note on this. They knew that Issei had to be dealt with, before it is too late. He then spoke with a deep breath. We have to recover what we have lost, the Amrita will be replaced. We need to speak to the other leaders about this, given that this can break the treaty. Lord Brahma is right. Sarasvati, Shiva's daughter, responded, as she continued with a serious tone. We have to recover our losses while dealing with Issei as well. I will come up with a plan to do so. Please do so, daughter. Shiva responded with a small smile, hoping his daughter could find a way to defeat them. He turned to Indra and asked, Speaking of which, I heard the devils are going to contact Lord Hades today, right? Yes, they are. Issei had recently killed Seraphal and many of the arrogant elders. As much as I hate to say it, Issei did a favor killing some of them. They had gotten on my nerves. Some gods were shocked by this attitude of Indra, but didn't blame him due to his nature and small mistrust against them. They had to focus on Issei, and find a way to deal with him before he could become a very big problem. Scene change. Training room, Issei's house, Sydney, Australia, 3 p.m. Issei was in the training room. He had asked Ophis to spar with him to test the effects of Amrita, as she obliged. This also allowed him to fulfill one of Ophis's conditions, which was to have a spar with Issei, ensuring that the dragon goddess can be satisfied with Issei being fine without her powers. The duo remembered Issei speaking about WHIS, and informed the angel managed to contact him even till here, in a different dimension, much to their surprise and shock. Even Grafia was surprised by this, being made aware of the Universe 7 that WHIS hailed from due to Issei having Zamasu's memories. I am glad you asked to spar against me, Ophis. Ophis gave a nod. She was aware if Issei doesn't prove himself, he must accept her power again, but if he is able to, Ophis would keep her powers to herself. You do remember the conditions, right, Saiyan? Ophis spoke emotionlessly, as Issei nodded in response, as he spoke. I am, let's begin. Issei exclaims for a moment, and transforms into a Super Saiyan, as Hell, who is the referee, exclaims. Fighters will start the match, and will only be able to end the battle when anyone wants to forfeit. And begin. Ophis immediately charged forward, unleashing a punch at Issei, who blocked with his hands. She soon acted quickly, following it up with a kick and a punch which were blocked by Issei with relative ease. Ophis had a small smile, seeing that Issei's body was much stronger since each punch can easily blow off the head of an ultimate class being. She started to rapidly fire punches which start to push Issei to his limits, but he is able to block them with ease. Ophis' smile was even improving even further. These attacks can even overpower Satan-class beings and contend with God-class beings. She was increasing the speed to near light speed, able to create shockwaves from every blow. Issei was able to block and respond with his own barrage of punches which Ophis was blocking from each strike. Some were even grazing her as well, much to her surprise, damaging some of her cheek. Guess I need to take it to my next level as well. Ophis started to raise her aura, and pushed forward, unleashing purple snake-like beings to bind Issei, as they started to crush him with their strength, only for Issei to yell and break through them like it was nothing, much to her surprise, and rapidly follow with his own barrage of ki blasts. Ophis gracefully glided around the arena, dodging them with succession, each ki blast triggering an explosion and a dust storm. She soon returned fire, as she immediately breathed some flames and released them onto Issei, holding back its full power. These were her own purple flames, which was much more powerful than Vitra's black flames, and are slightly lower than Drake's. Issei managed to dodge them, but the flames started to return and chase Issei around. Issei understood the flames were some sort of ability that chased the target around. He responded by firing a powerful ki blast, as he started to disperse the flames that were chasing him, weakening it. He kept on firing a barrage to keep them at bay, causing an explosion that pushed him behind. While in the air, he was waiting for the dust to settle, only finding out Ophis was missing. He looked around trying to sense her ki, only for a snake to arrive behind him and try to ambush him, shifting into Ophis as she tried to jab him, but Issei managed to grab the punch and strike his own, but Ophis had a smirk. She unleashed several snakes that had bound him, completely covering him from head to toe. Soon she forced them to explode, much to his shock. Hell was worried at this. As Ophis looked at the scene, the attack was enough to even kill someone like Zeus or Odin or even Cersex, if he was unlucky. She knew if Issei was still standing, he would be ready to fight even without her power. If not, he would have passed out from the attack, knocking him out cold. When the dust settled, Issei was revealed to be standing. He still had his Super Saiyan form, but his clothes were tattered slightly. He had a smirk, as he started to laugh in response, as he exclaimed with joy and happiness. That power, it's no wonder you are the dragon goddess of infinity. Something like this is a cakewalk for you, isn't it? Issei's Saiyan instincts were flaring even more. They are attracted to strong women, and it didn't matter if it was physical or emotional. They were wired that way. Ophis only responded with a smile, as she was happy that Issei was able to survive even without her power and still continue fighting. She can't wait to see the expression of Drake when he finds out on who he really abandoned. But I am not done yet. It's time to show the power of my newly gained immortality, and to go even further beyond that just Super Saiyan. Issei speaks with a smirk on his face, as he takes a deep breath and screams at the top of his lungs. Aya! Issei's ki starts to increase even further, forcing Hell to place a barrier around the fighting barrier so that the ki doesn't go out of control. It was only meant to hold off the attack so that it doesn't end up destroying the entire house. Ophis herself had to block the attack with her own barrier, as she also wasn't expecting for Issei to reach the next level so quickly. Once he was done, Issei's aura started to reduce a bit, transforming him into Super Saiyan 2, where his hair was more upwards and he started to release electricity. I'd like to call this Super Saiyan 2. Ophis widened her eyes at this. He managed to reach the next stage of Super Saiyan, meaning he was far more powerful than before. He then asked, "Ready for round 2, Ophis?" Ophis got into her stance, and smirked, giving Issei the signal he needs. She knew his immortality had worked, given that he was able to take an explosion that would have killed Surzex without any mercy. But it didn't kill him or even injure him, not even putting him out of his Super Saiyan, implying that the immortality has worked in full effect. She unleashed several snakes towards him, which were ready to pounce on him, as Issei fired several ki blasts at them, destroying them into nothingness. Ophis decided to not hold back, as she constantly kept using punches that can decimate even God-class beings. But Issei wasn't affected. He was able to block every single attack, much to Ophis's surprise. She was soon struck with a punch aimed at her face, which she dodged, but the shockwave was enough to start destroying the barrier, almost shattering it. Hell was getting worried, knowing full well that if this match continues, the whole house will be destroyed, and worse, the factions may get to them. She was breathing heavily, desperately trying to maintain the barrier to keep it afloat, as strong as she may be. She was no match to Issei and Ophis fighting in the location. She was considering learning time magic to reverse the damage in case fighting gets out of hand, since maintaining barriers won't be something she'll manage for long. Ophis looked at Hell, and understood what she had to do. She had a pressured look on her face, and she spoke while watching Issei prepare a powerful ki blast. "Issei, how about we call the match off?" Issei was surprised. Just when the fight was getting intense, he asked. "But I accept defeat. I have seen enough, Issei. I am aware that you are ready. Plus, if you continue, you may end up destroying the house. Save the destruction for the factions. They should be the ones you should combat. We'll fight at a location where we don't have to hold back." Issei looked at her for a moment, and sighed as he responded with a sigh. He powered down to his regular state, knowing that Ophis has accepted defeat, which is something a dragon usually won't do unless she had a good reason. "Fine." Hell sighed in relief, as she lowered the barrier, as he and Ophis landed down on their legs. He did earn a new form, which was Super Saiyan 2, and that was enough for the day. The factions aren't even aware of this new form. "Well, I will probably take a bath." Issei spoke with a serious tone. But he didn't want to deal with Hell's nagging and annoyance, as a drop of sweat could be seen forming on his head. He had to leave before Hell would complain about him stinking of sweat and body odor. Hell watched this with a small giggle, as she knew that she had managed to sort of tame this Saiyan Shinjin hybrid. At least, he listens to her, despite making a scene and getting annoyed about it. Ophis soon walked towards her, and spoke. "You seem to have kept him tamed, haven't you?" "Well, he still has the callousness and aggression of Zamasu. Even his sadism and ruthlessness are present in him. He has become more calmer and tolerant than before." Hell mused, noticing the change in Issei due to his experiences of being raised by the Hyoudou couple that managed to somehow retain faith of Zamasu in mortal kind, with the exception of the supernatural world, whom he wants to purge without hesitation, being reminded of how much of a problem they have become. "I guess, and the fact that WHIS managed to see this in him too. If Beerus would have come here, and if the supernatural would have provoked him, our world would be gone. I am glad they won't come here." Ophis spoke emotionlessly, however there was slight fear in her tone, knowing what Beerus is capable of. Even Hell didn't disagree, knowing some gods and devils would provoke him to the point of him destroying Earth. She was also afraid of Beerus. There was one thing that was clear, and it was that Beerus can easily kill them without hesitation or effort. "Anyways, I should head back to make some dinner. Ophis, you want something good to eat?" Ophis nodded in response, and spoke. "I want some chocolates." "Got it, then let's make some cake today in celebration for his new form. I will get the ingredients, and even buy you some chocolate. Let's head to the supermarket." Hell spoke with a gentle smile, as Ophis gave a nod. The two girls decided to head to the supermarket to get the ingredients, as they decided to make some cake in celebration for Issei's new form. They knew that the supernatural was starting to lose their chance in fighting against Issei as time passes by. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching and supporting us. See you in the next part.